Okay, everybody, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are around the world. My name is Andy Fell, as most of you know, the founder of a business called Gift 631, an events brand called What Winners Do. It's the amazing Royston Guest. Now, I've had the privilege of knowing Royston, it must be for about 15 years or so now. He's an individual that I respect and admire hugely. Royston is now the CEO of Pathways Global, and we'll get into a conversation about Pathways Global as we go through. He's a two-time published author, including the book just behind me, Built to Grow, another book called Rise. He's a business strategist, he's an executive coach, he's a speaker. I believe he's an absolute leadership expert. He's founded companies, he's built companies, and he's sold companies. And one of the things that amused me when I was looking at his website today, many of his clients call him their critical friend. Now, by critical, they don't mean he goes around criticizing them every day, but he's that important to them. He is their critical friend. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome Royston Guest. And Royston, it'd be really fantastic to start if you could just share your version of your story. You know, how did it all start? How did you become so passionate about what you do today, and just a little bit about the ups and downs of the journey?
Yeah, brilliant. So number one, it's great to be here. I've really been looking forward to this session. As you know, Andy, I love doing these sessions that are just, there's a framework, but we can take it wherever we want to go. So maybe a bit of backstory. My family started, we lived on a council estate when I was young. Everything I've done, I've earned through the bottom up is probably a good metaphor analogy. And I started an apprenticeship at 16 years of age in construction. £4,200 was my first ever salary. But it was the skills that I learned in that apprenticeship program are still serve me to this day in terms of the leadership, the business skills I've got in terms of running businesses. So I've got a real varied background that started in construction. I ended up in America running Amtrak projects for Balfour Beatty. And then when I came back to the UK, I got involved in mergers and acquisitions. And that's where I really started to get involved in business development, culture, integration. And the reason I set my first ever business up was we bought a business in Chesterfield, which is kind of mid Yorkshire, Sheffield in the UK. And one night I was signing a check for KPMG because they'd been doing some consulting work for us for 110 grand. And it was one of those cathartic moments where I just sat back and I went, what have I got from the money? And I thought there was a real opportunity with my generalist background for a niche boutique consultancy business. And I started out in sales training. And what was interesting was at the stage of setting up that business, I was earning, bear in mind, this was like 18 years ago, I was earning just over £100,000 a year, which 18 years ago was, decent money. And in my first year in business, I made £22,000, which was just enough to cover my costs. And it was a difficult journey. And sometimes in life, you've got to almost go backwards to go forwards. And you learned so much in those early stages to run the business. And that was my launch into my really entrepreneurial career. And for the last 2 decades now, I've been building businesses, selling businesses, helping clients grow their businesses, and doing all the stuff that you and I have in our relationship have been talking about for 15 years. Mm. That's a snapshot.
One of the things I find really interesting in that, Royston, is, you're signing that check to KPMG and I'm sure you're thinking, I can just do this better, which is a thought that's running around my mind at the moment. A lot of outplacement businesses that I see, and I just believe I could do it better. And it's often one of these thoughts that just sparks a real interest in taking your journey in a different direction. One of the things I really want to hone in early doors, though, is you help a lot of business leaders. And what do you believe is the essence of a great leader?
Wow, how long did we say we have for this session today? It's a massive question. I think there's a couple of things. Number one, I talk a lot about leadership brand, and brand doesn't just apply to a organization. The whole concept of brand is leaking across and applies as much to an individual. And I think for all of us, we've got to really think about, what do we want our brand identity to say about us? What is it that we want to be known for? And I think every great leader is a sentence. And naturally, when you think about organizational brands, there are word associations. So if you said Volvo, you'd probably go safety. If you say Disneyland, you'd probably go magical experiences. If you said Apple, you go leading edge technology. So all brands spend a fortune really being clear about where they want their brand to be positioned in the marketplace and what are the brand associations and the words that they want consumers to use when they talk about that brand. And I think the same principle applies for all of us and as leaders, that what is your brand identity? What are the 3 things that you really want to be known for as a leader? So I think that every great leader is a sentence, and for years I've been working on, and I recently changed mine. So now when I think about what I want to be known for in the marketplace, when I wake up every single day, it is about being purposeful, it's about being goals orientated, and it's about being culture driven. So I want to be known as a purposeful, goals orientated, culture driven leader. And each of those has got meaning. And I think for all leaders, life is about being purposeful. It's not about sleepwalking through life. It's not about being in autopilot mode. Life is for living with deliberate, conscious intent. And every single day, if we're making every day count, if we're making every hour count, if we're making every minute count, if we're making every conversation count, then we should be being purposeful and really thinking about whatever scenario, situation you're going into, whether it's a meeting, whether it's a one-to-one conversation, whether it's a session like this morning. When I'd done my warm-up before I came on this morning, I thought about what I wanted to share. I got myself in the performance zone because my goal in the next 45 minutes is just to add so much value to people. And if people just take away one golden nugget. So I think for leaders, being purposeful and being really clear that you're not sleepwalking, that everything you are doing, you're doing with deliberate, conscious intent is just so fundamentally important. You know, goals orientated, it is about delivering goals. And you could talk about being values driven, but I think values is one facet of a cultural philosophy that you have, which is why I used to say a purposeful, goals orientated, values driven leader. But I think cultural driven leader is far more all encompassing and just allows you to think about the broader impact that you make.
Yeah, and can I just go back to one thing you said there? You talked about before this session, you got yourself into your flow state, into your ideal performance state. How do you do that?
So one of the things I've done is I'm a big fan of writing my goals. So still to this day, I commit to black and white. So I wrote on a piece of paper, what difference and value do I want to add in the session with Andy and his team today? And that focus question, it's almost like pressing the igniter switch on your neck-top computer that sends a hot wired message to your brain that says, get yourself in your performance zone, be the best that you can be absolutely conscious and present. So that's one of the things I do is actually write and commit my goal to black and white, one sentence about what it is I want to achieve. And then I know that I've got my conscious and my subconscious storehouse and engines, everything, all my resources are working for me in being really present in the session and really adding value. So you've got to know what the outcome is that you're wanting to achieve and how you're going to do it.
Yeah, and I think one of the other really powerful things you said in that is people sleepwalking through life. And I absolutely fundamentally agree with you. And I believe one of the things that holds so many people back is their mindset. It's a lack of self-belief. It's a lack of self-confidence. Sometimes it's a lack of self-esteem. And again, just reading through some of the material on your website and knowing you like I do, you talk about, success is 80% mindset. So how can you help, the members on this call, the members who will watch the recording, how can you help people improve their level of self-belief, their level of self-confidence, and their mindset?
So you're absolutely right. I mean, I talk a lot about success in life is 80% psychology and 20% skill. So RISE, which you mentioned earlier, that is all the psychology of success. That's all my experiences packed into from 2 decades into that book. So I think there's a couple of things. Number one, we have a unique advantage over every other animal species that was put on planet Earth. And that advantage that we have is that we have 100% control over how we choose to think. It's a choice. And I think the first thing is you've got to run your filters. I mean, for me at the moment, I will watch the news for 5 minutes every day, just so I know the sound bites of what's going on so that I can deal in the facts, not the conjecture of what's happening in the world. But apart from that, I switch the filter off because it's so negative at the moment. And I think we live in a world where we're bombarded with negative messages every single day. And yet we talk about developing a winning mentality. And you can't leave that to chance. You've got to run your filters. You've got to surround yourself with people who inspire, motivate, elevate, and challenge you to be the best that you can be. There's a great story about there's two deaf frogs who are hopping around in a farmer's yard. Two frogs hopping around in a farmer's yard, and they see this bucket of milk. And they run over and they jump in the bucket of milk and they drink all the milk till they fall to the bottom of the bucket, fat and bloated. And all these negative frogs gather around the top of the bucket and they start shouting to these two frogs inside, the farmer's coming, he's going to get you, you're going to die. And these two frogs look at each other and think, we better get out the bucket fast. So there they are jumping away like this. And there's more negative frogs gathering around the top of the bucket. And they're shouting to the two frogs inside, you're never going to get out, the farmer's going to get you, you're going to die. And the frogs are jumping away like this until one of the frogs falls to the bottom defeated. But the other frog, he kept on jumping. And just as the farmer gets close and he picks up this spade and he's about to hit this poor frog on the back of the head and kill it, he takes one last leap, jumps over all the negative frogs and manages to get away. Now, the question is, how did he do it with all the negative frogs around him? Let me tell you, he was deaf. He thought all the other frogs were cheering for him. And the problem in the world that we live in today is people would rather talk about the negative stuff and chop the foundations off from underneath the building that you're trying to build, as opposed to helping you build your building taller. And I think in life, we've all got to be a deaf frog. You've got to get really clear about the goal and what it is that you're wanting to achieve. I always talk in life that do your passion. You can probably detect even from the first 15 minutes on this session, I'm passionate about what I do. This is not a job for me. It's my passion, adding value to people, growing businesses, unlocking people potential. It's what I do every single day. So I think when you're clear about what your goals are, you're passionate about it, and head and heart, you cut you in two and it just runs through your veins. And then you run your filter and you close out and you are the deaf frog and you don't get distracted by all the noise that's around you. You play the victor, not the victim. Then you've got to just hold your nerve and keep driving on that pathway to success.
Yeah, there's so much in that. I mean, I fundamentally agree. I push all negativity as far out of my life as I possibly can. And that sometimes means you've got to love people from a distance, because sometimes it's not always the people closest to you who give you the level of support that you actually need to deliver what you're capable of delivering in life. I absolutely agree that I spend very, very little time scrolling through social. I spend very little time watching the news. And again, it's just pushing this stuff away. And in its place, surrounding myself with really just aspirational people who are going to challenge me, they're going to stretch me, but they're going to lift me. They're going to be the wind beneath my wings, to use my own purpose statement. People like yourself, and I absolutely agree. Within 15 minutes, I've spent 2 days in the studio recording a new program, and it's been a big 2 days, mentally draining. And within 15 minutes of talking to you, I feel absolutely on top of the world. And I think that's why, so many use that expression, the critical friend. And one of the other things I would love to dig into is how do you help others, refine or define their value proposition? There'll be some people on here who go, wow, to have this sentence or to have this personal brand, clarity of personal brand is so powerful. So what top tips do you have to help people think about their own kind of value proposition or their own brand, and where do they start?
So I think when you think about from a personal brand perspective here, not thinking about a value proposition from a business perspective, but from a personal perspective, if I the way I do it with clients that I work with is I start off by saying, who are leaders that you really admire? So if you think about the best leader that's ever led you, what were the traits that you really admired in that individual and in that person? When you see people that you really admire, whether it's in the sports world or whether it's in business, when you look at certain people and you put them up there on the pinnacle, what are the traits? What's the recipe? What are the ingredients that you draw out from those people? And there'll never be one person, I don't believe, who has all the ingredients that make the rounded person. What it will be, it'd be like a pick and mix. That you think about one person, you go, well, I really like them because talk about integrity and trust. They epitomize trust and integrity. that person over there, they're passionate. So straight away, I take those two ingredients and I start to mix them together to create my own unique recipe of what I want my leadership brand to say about me. You look over there and you go, a Lewis Hamilton who's just won his 93rd race, on course to be a 7 times winner. What is it? Focus. Where focus goes, energy flows. Is that another facet within your leadership brand? So I think it's a really cathartic experience, Andy, just to start off by doing a mind map and just brainstorming what's the recipe that make up a really compelling, strong personal stroke leadership brand, and start to capture all those ingredients. And over the course of the next few weeks, as you go about what you do on a daily basis, whether it's tuning into sessions like on Future You, whether it's seeing somebody being interviewed on TV, you'll start to become more conscious about really starting to capture those key ingredients that really make that recipe for success. And then once you've got those, it's about really starting to chunk it down. I mean, it took me a long time to get to that articulation and to get down to 3 things where actually the essence of what it's about is about being a purposeful, goals-orientated, culture-driven leader. There's lots that sit in each of those 3 areas. But start top of funnel, start with that brainstorming exercise and start to chunk it down. And ultimately, it'll be a journey to ultimately get to where you can create one sentence that captures the essence of what you want your brand to be and what you want it to say about you.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely beautiful. It's interesting. Someone asked me today. They just said, describe the difference you make, or it was like, tell me in 5 words, essentially, your work. And I said, simple, practical, actionable, clear, and based on experience, space. And it's just able to articulate it in simple terms that is based in the customer's language. But I love where you've taken it, which is really taking it to a much, much higher level than I would suggest where I currently am at. I want to just dig in a little bit deeper, if I can, Royston. Everyone listening to this will go, wow, this guy, Royston Guest, his level of self-belief, self-confidence, self-esteem, this guy knows his stuff. He's got a really powerful mindset. How does Royston Guest recover from a disappointment or a challenge? How do you bounce back efficiently? I mean, we've got Rafaro here, who's based down in Zimbabwe, and she was leading a member-to-member call, and I never forget one of the things she said about resilient people. It's this ability to bounce back efficiently. So how do you bounce back efficiently?
Yeah, so you talk about this, Ian Dowie coined the expression bounce back ability, which is actually a word in the English language now, in the English dictionary, bounce back ability. So I use the metaphor that in life, you've got 2 kinds of balls, I believe. You've got rubber balls and you've got glass balls. And it's about understanding the distinction and the difference between the 2. So work for me is a rubber ball. That in life, don't set yourself up with false expectations that you're not going to take knocks or bumps in the road as you go along. And in work, I think about work and my professional career as being like a bouncy ball. And the great thing about the bouncy ball is you're going to take knocks, you're going to hit the deck. But the great thing about the bouncy ball is the harder it hits the deck, the higher it bounces back up. And in life, what it's about is that you're going to take knocks, but it's about getting back in the arena really quickly and getting back out there and taking action. And you mentioned the word resilience, and I think of resilience, and part of it is with that rubber ball metaphor is about how you develop your own personal resilience. And I see resilience as being 3 things from a personal perspective. Number 1, it's a unique ability to confront reality head on, that you're not delusional, you don't bury your head in the sand, that you are absolutely faced off into the headwinds in terms of the challenges, the opportunities that you face. So unique ability to confront reality head on. The second thing is that life is about an unwavering belief that life is purposeful and meaningful. And if I ever lost the belief that life is purposeful or meaningful and I'm not making a difference every single day, then I would change course of what I'm doing, because that's the North Star that never allows me to lose sight. So I might take the knocks, but as long as I'm locked in on that North Star about ultimately what I'm trying to achieve, I never lose sight of that end goal of where I'm trying to get to. And then I think the third key part of resilience from a personal perspective is a uncanny ability to improvise and adapt. And we've probably seen that so much in 2020 with the pandemic, that we've had to pivot, we've had to do things differently. And you can't be a fixed mindset. You've got to have that growth mindset. And I think, particularly as an entrepreneur, you've got to be fast in your thinking, where you are decisive, where you survey the landscape and understand all the variable factors and fixed factors you're working with. But then when you make a decision, you are agile, you're decisive, and you implement really quickly. So I think that's how I do it, Andy.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fantastic as well. And I have a very, very short, sharp, simple mantra: decide what I'm going to do, commit to it. I need to be, at least a 9 out of 10 committed, or I don't even start. Decide, commit, go. And the gap between committing and going has to be very, very small. And then once I start, the only way to start is to start. And as we both know, entrepreneurial businesses, you've got to move. And once you move, if you don't get it quite right, you move again. You sometimes it's a big pivot, sometimes it's a reshape, but move and then move and then move and then move. But you've got to keep moving. And one of my concerns about too many businesses in 2020 is they're just being too static, and they think that at some point we'll be through this and then we'll just pick up almost where we're from. Which brings me to, I want to spend a few minutes, because I've had a little look at growth pathways, and I know you've got tremendous expertise in helping people, lead, grow, develop, build businesses, whether they're entrepreneurial or scaled businesses. So what is growth pathways? What does it do, and how does it help?
So just before I answer that, can I just close the loop on one thing you just said there, because it's really important that the gap between your evaluate and then take action. Success leaves clues. I think it's a great expression. Success leaves clues. And the challenge is, if you're not doing your evaluation and stopping to get to the balcony of your life and do the evaluation and thinking about what's working, what isn't working, every single day I go through the playbook of the day in my mind at the end of the day, and I'm just reflective. And I have this little process called the Focused 5. And I just going through in my mind, and I think about 5 columns, and I go, right, what worked well today? What do I need to maintain? What do I need to do less of? What do I need to do more of? What do I need to stop? What do I need to start? And the problem, Andy, is people are not getting to the balcony of their life often enough to do the evaluations, because success leaves clues and also failure leaves clues. And you've got to learn from both of those in equal measure in order to make sure that you're on the right pathway to success. But in my experience, people are not doing what I call the preview review sessions. They're not making enough time to do that evaluation, to then do the adjustments, whether big or small, to then go again and make sure that they're on track with where they want to get to.
100%. I debrief every single core activity that I do. I do a debrief in the moment. I do an end of day debrief, a Friday 15, which is perhaps, again, just the week in review. And as you know, I'll have my daily Mozart time for myself, by myself, with myself, no technology, no chance of interruption and disruption, getting up to that balcony level view. I think it's absolutely essential. And a guy, I'm not sure if you ever came across him, a guy called Yehuda Shinar, he said there's 2 things about winners that they do more than the average. The first thing is they think correctly under pressure. And the second thing is that winners debrief more than the average, which is exactly your point. So again, brilliant advice, which leads us back to, growth pathways, and please do share, because I think there's huge value in this.
Yeah. So the reason we created Pathways, I sold our face-to-face consulting business at the start of this year, because I just couldn't get to add enough value to enough people through a face-to-face business. And interestingly enough, what we did 2 years ago was we looked at the marketplace, and what we recognized was there's a lot of personality profiling tools out there like MBTI, Discovery Insights, which look at team dynamics and your personal traits. But what there was no tool out there which was a personality profile for a business that allowed you to identify what stage are we at in our business growth journey. Are we at infancy? Are we at adolescence? Are we at the groove, or are we at maturity? And how do I assess our business against 10 growth enablers through questionnaires, an algorithm-driven tool that thousands of business owners now complete every single day, where they can really start to understand scientifically where they're at on their business growth journey, that it gives you a priority focused report and an actionable plan that says, right, over the next 90 days, this is what you need to focus on in BD and sales. This is what you need to focus on in marketing against the 10 growth enablers. And it gives you all the content, tools, templates, webinars that match up precisely to the priority focus areas that it gives you. So 2 years ago, we started that journey. After investing £500,000 and 2 years, Pathways launched in July this year, and it's just gone stratospheric. There is a 14-day free trial if anybody wants to have a play with the tool. All you need to do is go to www.growthpathways.com. You can sign up to a 14-day free trial. There's a great growth enabler on there, which I'd urge everybody to do first, since we're talking about leadership, which is about you and leadership. And then I always say to people, start with that, because businesses don't grow on their own, leaders grow businesses. And you've got to do the inner work in terms of lead self before you can think about how you grow your business or how you lead others. So if you do the You and Leadership Growth Enabler as part of your free 14-day trial, it will give you a great benchmark and frame and foundation from which you can then build. And now, Andy, there's over 140 hours of content on the platform. It's just amazing. The team have done a great job building it.
Yeah, and what I'll do, I'll post the links both to your website, but also to Growth Pathways. Everyone can access, a lot of content around Royston and his business there. I also think, by the way,
Andy, there's also the free blog as well on Royston Guest. I mean, there's so much free resources on the Royston Guest website as well in terms of webinars and content. So, there's one of my principles is this. Let me share this with you. So I'm in my home office at the moment. So sat on my desk is this boomerang, which of course will sit well with Australia. But for 10 years now, in any of the businesses that I own or run or I sit on the board of, whenever anybody joins as part of their induction, they get given a boomerang. And part of the whole philosophy is that life is a boomerang. If you throw it out there and you add phenomenal value, then all the trappings and the rewards of success will come back. But unfortunately, this is going to make me sound old now, even though I'm only 47. I think in life, you've got a contribution bowl and you've got a rewards bowl. And unfortunately, too many people are spending too much time looking at the rewards bowl and are fretting because it's not full. And my challenge is, don't focus on your rewards bowl, focus on your contribution bowl. Because if you throw the boomerang out there every single day, you add more value than people were expecting or they were thinking they were going to get. Then all the trappings of success, your rewards bowl will take care of itself. So part of my life is that if we seem to be deviating from our goals, my conversation always with my teams is, guys, we're not doing enough in the contribution bowl.
That is one of the first teachings I remember from Royston Guest a long, long time ago. And not always, I have to say, but the vast majority of the time, I think that has been one of the things that's been top of my mind. And I strongly recommend everyone, just once you get the recording, just rewind over that statement of Royston's. I think that is so powerful. And if you focus on that contribution bowl, as you say, Royston, over time, the rewards bowl looks after itself. It's 6:31 here. My business is Gift 631. It's my favorite time of the day. So that's the time when I need to open it up to questions. Just a couple of things. Phil McVeigh, who's based in Perth, Australia, but originally from Northern Ireland, says, bounce back ability, what a brilliant phase. Kudos to Ian Dowie, who's another guy from Northern Ireland. Simone Hall, Rise is an epic book by Royston. It's like a Bible to me. The amazing Lisa Brindle agrees with that. So, you've got Built to Grow and Rise to go and purchase. We need to. One of those needs to be one of the first books we study for the virtual book stroke podcast club. So I'm really keen to open it up to some questions from the group. And if you have a question, we've got a lot of members on. Please just take yourself off mute. Okay, the first question has actually come to me by text. So I'm just gonna, Craig, who's listening down in Melbourne, Australia, the text says, how does Royston get up every morning and hit the day being an amazing leader? How do you get up every morning and hit the day being an amazing leader?
So number one, I'm probably blessed because I'm a natural morning person anyway. So a bit like you, Andy, I have my morning ritual that I'm an early riser. I get up at 5 o'clock every morning. And the first thing I do is I come in my office, I just plan out my day. and I get myself into the performance zone. And that doesn't just happen. You've got to transition. And in life, whether it's throughout the day, and I noticed this with working in a home environment and when we've been in lockdown and so forth, even more, that you've got to go through your day and think about your transition points. So the moment I walk into my home office, that is once I cross that threshold, that's like my warm up that gets me into the performance zone. It's like the igniter switch that says, Royston, lock in the core, shoulders back, get in the zone. What's the focus today? And our absolute North Star for everything that we do is aligned to our core mission for Pathways, which is about changing the way the world grows businesses, one business and one person at a time. And the great thing about the one business and one person at a time, when I look at my diary and when I look at my success list, my brutal prioritization is every single meeting, every single conversation, every single session I'm going on to, is it going to help us to deliver that mission? And if it's not, then comes the question, why am I doing it? So, it's a no-brainer when you think about coming on Future You this morning, because we've got so many great people on. We're in an environment where people want to learn, they're in the growth mindset. So it's a big tick in the box. So it's a conscious switch to get into the performance zone every single morning. But part of my ritual is that early rising at 5 o'clock.
And I think one of the absolutely critical things that you said there was brutal prioritization. And I remember one of the pieces of feedback that I was given as a general manager in the bank here was, to be a general manager, you've got to be a strong prioritizer. To take your life where you're capable of taking it, you've got to be a ruthless prioritizer. And I think that brutal prioritization is so important. The ability to say no to stuff that actually doesn't really matter. That's not taking you in the direction of your purpose and your North Star. As you know, Craig, it was a great question. I'm a fundamental believer that highly successful people have a really clear and well-established morning routine. I also get up at 5 o'clock. It's a little bit easier, I think, on the Gold Coast and many parts of the world. Brilliant question to get us going. What are the questions?
Andy, can I just pick up on one thing you said there, because it's really important, and I think this will be a golden nugget for people today. Excuse me. I wish I'd learned this earlier in my career, that in life, it's about saying no to the unimportant things so that you can say yes to the important things. And naturally, my default mode as an entrepreneur is when people bring me opportunities, I can naturally go, oh yeah, we can make that work. And Jay, my wife, who's a great regulator for me in terms of, she'll always come to me and say, Royston, no problem if you want to do that. What are you going to stop doing? Yeah. And I think in life, sometimes it's not about trying to be everything to everybody. And it is about brutal prioritization. And I've learned at 47, and I wish I'd learned it earlier, that I say no more often than I do yes today. And I think the ratio should be saying no 2/3 to 1/3 of the time saying yes. And I think if you get that formula right, then what you will make sure is that you're not trying to be everything to everybody, that you are really finding your lane, you're finding your pathway, you're finding your groove, and you just go on a pathway of mastery in terms of nailing that pathway.
Brilliant. Thank you. Lisa, I see you've unmuted.
Good morning. Good morning. Hi there, Royston. So, Royston, one of the great things that I've picked up from you recently is about bouncing forward into the new world. So thinking about that and thinking about the new leadership in a remote world or leadership in a hybrid world, what do you see as being one of the or some of the changes that our leaders are going to need to make in working in more of a hybrid or a remote world?
So the number one principle, it's a great question, Lisa, so thank you. The number one principle I think that is different when you are leading remotely versus when you've got people in the office is that you need to change and switch your focus from the inputs to the outputs. And let me explain what I mean by that. That if you walked along a lake and you saw a fisherman at the end of the day and he was packing up his fishing tackle, and you said to him, how's your day's fishing been? He will say, a great day's fishing, I caught 10 fish. What he won't do is he won't say, oh, I cast my rod 20 times or 100 times or 200 times. And in a work environment where you've got people in the same building, you can see people at the desk. So you measure stuff in a different way. Whereas when you're leading remotely, you can't focus on inputs. You've got to focus on measuring outputs. And in leading remotely, for a lot of people who it's not a normal 9 till 5 day. And we have to be respectful as leaders of that, because they might have kids that they're homeschooling. They might have other stuff that they're doing. And I don't mind if somebody's working 5 in the morning and they're working at 9 o'clock at night, wherever your preferred working hour is. So it's not about managing a time frame. It's about managing the outputs of what people deliver. And it's just a change in focus to absolute getting laser beam focused on the tangible, quantifiable output measures, not the input measures. And I think for leaders, that's the singular biggest significant switch I think they need to make in thinking about leading remotely in this new hybrid world.
Lisa,
Thank you, Royston. No, love the fisherman story. Brilliant. Thank you.
Lakesh, I see. Okay, this is a question from Lakesh Shah down in Melbourne. How do you know if you're making the right connections to help you step forward into the new future?
So by connections, you mean the right people and networking?
I would suggest that's where we take the question, yeah.
So Andy, I have a really simple philosophy, which is a test on this, that when somebody says they want to have a meeting with me, my question is why, and Helene's a great filter for me in making sure that we qualify. But when somebody sits on the opposite side of the table, my thermometer check of whether they're making the right connection is whether they sit and they start by saying, Royston, let me tell you what I can do for you. And so many times you hear people who sit on the other side of the table and go, oh, Royston, I'd love to do guest blogs for you because it'll really help me increase my reach. And it's like, hang on a second, that is not the boomerang. Focus on the contribution and the value it can add for you first. And if I benefit off the back of that, then great. So I think the key is to make sure that you surround yourself with people and connections who will challenge you to grow, who don't suck the energy out of you, and who are coming to you with a value proposition of what they can do for you first, not what you can do for them. And I think that's a really important distinction for people to get, particularly when you're looking at creating partnerships or you're approaching other people. Focus on the contribution, the value that you add, the difference that you'll make first. And then, let them be the driver of, okay, that's great. I can see what you can do for me. What can I do for you?
There's a brilliant question come from Elizabeth down in New South Wales. How do we best bring together a global leadership team in these times?
Wow, how do you best bring together a global leadership? I love the diversity, and I think global leadership teams are absolutely where it's at, because you get diversity. And that's the cultural diversity from different countries and different generations. It's different diversities in terms of cultural backgrounds, and men, women, young people, old people. I think the more diverse you make your team, because life is about debating for the right answer. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to surround yourself with clones who just think like you do, because then you're not going to get the critical thinking, or you're not going to get the debate that's really going to allow you as a group. Challenging conversations are healthy when you are all aligned to an ultimate North Star, but you are debating for the right answer. And I think there's more opportunity to build global teams today than there ever has been. I mean, look at this Future You as an example this morning. Technology is the great enabler that allows you to connect and to interact and to engage. And I think far more people, we've probably accelerated people's comfort zones with technology and interacting like this. We've probably done in 6 months what it would ostensibly take 10 years to do. So I think there's more opportunity to build global teams than there ever has been, because technology can really work for you.
And one of the other great things, Royston, is you can bring the A team to every meeting. You know, if there's a virtual conference in Sydney, you can bring Royston Guest. You can bring Jim Brandon from Florida. You can just bring your global A team to an event wherever it is. And that's the same almost, when you're connecting a global business, you can just bring the right people to every meeting. I'm going to take one last question, which is from Jacinta up in Brisbane. We've only got a couple of minutes to go. This is a great question to finish. Jacinta, I'll tell you a brilliant, on the Calm meditation app, there's a brilliant 9-minute meditation which answers this question. It's by a guy called Trent Shelton, who used to play NFL in the US. But the question goes like this, Royston: how do you say no, especially when people are vulnerable but they are sucking the joy out of you.
Oh my gosh, that's what a question to finish on.
I know. Fortunately, it's for Royston.
I have this expression that negative people are worse than negative experiences. And the question is why? And the challenge is the experience might only last 15 minutes. The person might hang around for a lifetime. So I think one of the things you've got to do is choose. You can't always choose your family, but choose your friends really wisely in terms of who you spend time with. And it goes back to a little point that you talked about, Andy, earlier about surround yourself with positive, like-minded people who will inspire, who will enable you, and who will challenge to stretch you and grow. Give me the other part of the question again. So that's the first part. So
how do you say no, especially when they're vulnerable, but at the same time they're sucking the joy out of you?
Yeah, and sometimes the reality is, and it depends on what role you're doing and the context in which, when they're vulnerable. A lot of the time it might not be that it's not for me to be able to help, but I will refer people off into other areas where I do think they can get help. But you've just got to, goes back to the point you made earlier. Sometimes in life, you've got to be brutal in terms of your prioritization. There's only so much that you can do. There's only so many people that you can add. There's only so much difference that you can make. So you've just got to be really focused and centered in where you can add value and where you can make the difference.
And Rafaro's just leapt in and said, a couple of people said, great question. It's not that simple. I've learned to also love from afar sometimes. It helps. And really that was Trent Shelton's point, that, be very clear on where you want to take your life, your purpose and where you're going. And sometimes you then have to love people from a distance. You don't cut them out of your life completely, but you don't allow them to dominate your time. And it's gently, as I say, just still having a connection, but from a distance. Royston, it is 6:45 here, so 8:45 in the UK, and different times in different parts around the world. I know we could continue this conversation for a considerable period of time. It's been absolutely inspiring, and I'm gonna not sleep for a good few hours this evening as I just replay this conversation in my mind. There's so much quality in everything that you say. It's just really inspiring, but at the same time practical. As you say, there's so many golden nuggets to take away. So I just want to thank you. I'll post the links to Royston. Obviously, we mentioned the books, which I strongly recommend. Go and have a look at the free trial in Global Pathways. Just Royston, thank you again. It's been a real pleasure and a privilege.
And I'd love to, Andy, if there's a future opportunity, I'd love to come back and do some more sessions. If you do a review of Rise, then I'm happy to come on and do a questions and answer session on it as well. So whatever I can do to support you in the group, I love what you do. Yeah, just let me know and I'll be here.
Absolutely brilliant, mate. You take care and have an absolutely fabulous day.
Thanks, guys. Take care.